Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud of having one of the slowest channels on YouTube. I don't speak very fast, English is not my native language, and therefore you get my permission to listen to my videos at 1.5 or even double speed. And you know what the cool thing really is? Double speed. That's what we're going to talk about in this video, which will be the fastest video I ever produced. Promise you, we're going to have a look at this Adolph Bernhard Marx. I recently made two videos about this Adolph Bernhard Marx. This is one of them. You can check it out on my YouTube channel, obviously, and this is the other one. If you haven't seen that video, what are you doing with your life? Because Adolph Bernhard Marx is really an interesting figure, not only because he published this work in 1863, but it's of course a position he has, the place he has in history. 1863, right before he died, he published this book, but more importantly, the place that Adolph Bernhard Marx had in the 19th century, in the history and the evolution of music performances. We talked about extensively in this video. Like, check it out, about the real influence that Marx had, and also how you have to read these sources, how you have to contextualize these sources. You cannot just take everything one-on-one and apply that to your daily musical practice, so to say, and say, okay, Wim told us that Bernhard Marx is a really interesting figure. There are some elements which he published in his book that are really valuable to Beethoven, so the entire book is valuable to Beethoven. Yes, in a way it is, but you have to contextualize that. Marx was child of his time, and in 1863 he wrote something that was really valuable in 1863. But the point of these sources, written by, people of a certain age, people of a certain experience, like later in the 19th century, when you read them and you contextualize them, I mean by that, you confront them with other sources, with other things written by other people that might confirm the same thing, that might actually say, okay, we agree with you. And what happens when you do that, when you find other sources that actually confirm a certain element, a certain aspect of interpretation, in this case of the history of interpretation, the history of interpreting Beethoven more specifically, when you have other sources that confirm that element, also talking about the past, also talking about an evolved performance practice, also talking about the fact that music, as here in the case of Adolph Bernhard Marx, as he describes, was played much slower in the past compared to 1863, well, then you have something that I would call is contextualized and that you can almost safely take as a fact. For instance, we touched upon this really cool text, of which I, in last video or in the video that I referred to, actually made a point about the previous passage. But there is a passage here that we're going to focus on, and that will, like, for people that are new here, by the way, if you're new here, welcome. That might be a shock. You will hear things, you will hear Beethoven played as never before. The consequence of what Marx actually is writing about is just like unbelievable. For people that really cannot take the whole beat, but what we're doing here, this new way, this old way, in effect, looking at the metronome use, the way that Beethoven used this metronome, like Schumann, Mendelssohn, Chopin, they didn't use the metronome as in modern days, where you have one click for each note value in the metronome, but they took two ticks, like they had the 1 and 2, the back and forth together, very much like a pendulum is read today by physicists. Well, if you have that view, that solves the entirety of the metronomic problem by making everything playable to start with. But if you have troubles accepting that, then this video, I can promise you, will be pretty devastating, because there is no other solution. After seeing this video, there should be enough for you to say, okay, I don't want to play in whole beat, I don't want to play Beethoven in that tempo, but there is no other solution than to accept it to be an historical reality. And for those of you, of course, who are a long-time viewer, the subscribers of my channel, you are a great community, by the way. You will be smiling, all of you, because in spite of you loving the slowest channel on YouTube, one of the you also love speed, especially when I demonstrate you the outcome, the implications, so to say, of this modern reading, what we call the single beat reading of a metronome. It's hilarious, but in this video we go one step further. We're gonna have marks in the center of everything, and especially this passage. But before we do that, please like and subscribe to my channel, because I want to grow this channel to 100,000 subscribers. I know it's a stretch. We are in the middle. This channel is growing very slowly. That's something that you can expect from a channel that is like so niching down classical music as to reconstruct the historical, authentic performance practice, and more specifically, of course, tempo reconstruction. And also, I would like to thank my Patreons for supporting this work, for supporting our project, for making me actually take the time to record this video on a Monday afternoon, as it is now October 28, 2024. So without further ado, let's go back to our friend Marx. I even made for you an overview of the points he made. But before we do that, let's read what he had to say. So in the other video, and again, check it out, it's 40 minutes, I know, but there's a lot of elements, a lot of facts, a lot of interesting topics, I would say, that I touched upon in this video here, a bedtime fairy tale by Beethoven. So what does Marx actually say here? Again, the points in the other video, very quickly, Marx made the point like, okay, we have these Italian tempo words, allegro, presto, adagio, whatever, they're a little vague. They do not indicate precisely what tempo the composer or editor or publisher or whatever, composer primarily, I would say, wants. And so there came the metronome, and the metronome ended all confusion to everyone. That's a very important statement. Marx actually made a statement in 1863 saying that the metronome ended all confusion to everyone. That's very strange. Why do I say that? Because today, the metronome is actually not a device that you use like in these piano lessons where teachers want you to play faster and faster and faster. And of course, you're going to hate the device. But the metronome as a tempo indicator, the metronome as used by Beethoven, by Chopin, by Schumann, by Mendelssohn, you name it, as to give tempi to their pieces in order for us, for future generations. That's you, by the way, to know what they had in mind, what their intended tempo was. Well, that function of the metronome was embraced by everyone. Why? Because it was an accurate, exact way of describing, of giving tempo to a piece of music. And so Marx acknowledges that. He even mentions the Opus 106 by Beethoven, which is the Hammerklavier Sonata, one of the most debated metronome marks of our modern time, in spite of the fact that the Hammerklavier Sonata is actually just a moderate problem, I would say. But in that context, he writes about the people on stage that plays so much too fast, exaggerate tempo. With such players, we must deal according to their own personal interests. So I see it in front of me. You go on stage and you talk to these performers and you say, if you really, we must ask them, play the finales of the sonatas, opus 26, 27, 53, 57, twice as fast as they ought to be played. Do the sentences really become more brilliant? Do they really grant you an opportunity of showing yourselves as bravura players? And so on and so on. The thing that interests us is this. If you really, we must ask them, play the finales of these sonatas twice as fast as they ought to be played. That's a cool sentence. Why? Marx refers to metronome marks. And, as I said, I even made an overview for you. How cool is that? No reason anymore to not like this video and not share it with your friends and not subscribe. Just saying. So we have Marx here. He says pianists are playing too fast. Some movements even twice the speed it should get. Well, that's a great English sentence if I read it out loud now. Anyways, you get the point. The metronome ended all confusion. Then we have two options. Marx first option, Marx used the metronome in single beat, or Marx used the metronome in whole beat. I'm sorry for everyone out there that just doesn't want to accept the metronome as an accurate tempo indicator. It is. The book that we're going to publish before the year 2027, you all know that, working extremely hard. I would wish to show you everything that goes on behind the scenes, but it's impossible. Where is my Instagram manager? Anyways, the book will have 100 quotes, and that's just a small selection, given by composer, famous people of the 19th century, unknown people in the 19th century that published treatises, whatever in regard of music, talking about the metronome. And you won't find any other type of description saying that the metronome is an accurate tempo indicator. Well, Marx acknowledges that. And so you can use the metronome only in two ways. In the modern way, tick-tack, or tick-tick-tick-tick, or in the what we believe, what we think, what is inevitable, seeing the evidence and the facts, the old way, the tick-tock, in a way. So the 1 and 2 reading, which is whole beat. And so the other day, our friend Alberto, that's the same Alberto who recorded the Beethoven symphonies with me in 4 hands, as 10 CDs, 72 pages booklet. So just buy the damn thing. I mean, we sold over 400 of these. I keep saying that, but I want to reach 500. Of course, that's difficult. If you're an entrepreneur and if you're an online entrepreneur, you know how difficult it is. We need more promotion. You should get ads seeing this the entire day. Anyways, that will happen maybe once. But this Alberto was recently at my place to record this piece. This is the last movement of the Opus 26. That is the piece that Marx actually refers to here. So you get the point, or you start to get the point, right? And you're looking here at the last movement, exactly one of these movements that Adolf Bernhard Marx referred to. See here a metronome mark, half note 76, allegro. So not too quick. It's not an allegro molto, it's not an allegro vivace, it's not a presto, it's not a prestissimo, it's just an allegro, just above allegretto, just above allegro moderato, so to say. And now, if you're used to listening in whole beat, you will, and then of course I will show you a fragment, what else had you in mind, of that recording. That will be, by the way, the second box of the complete Beethoven keyboard works. So that is CD number 1 of the second box. That's CD number 10 of the complete Beethoven cycle. I mean, guys, can I take a moment and say how cool that is? Box number 1 of the complete cycle will be a box like this. We're postponing the Kickstarter a little bit because I am finishing the notation course. That's still part of this full Beethoven experience. That will be a cool course going over all the symphonies. Learn reading the notation, what note values did Beethoven use, what time signatures, combine that with the metronome marks, what can we learn, what's the effect, what can we learn about the character of the movement. All of that still will be available as part of the full Beethoven experience, in which you get 2 of these boxes, a lot of hours of podcast, a lot of other stuff, and this premium course. I didn't plan to make it that incredibly deep, but there was no other way. There will be 75 videos. You will have a shortcut in 20 minutes. You will cross through the entire course. You can also take a shortcut of 8 hours and then you can also spend 3 months full time working on this course. If you now buy this full Beethoven experience, link in the description, you get it still for the price of that full Beethoven experience. Once the course is launched to everything of the full Beethoven experience, it will become a standalone course, and there's no way that we're going to give that for that price still in the context and in of this full Beethoven experience. Is just, this is just a premium course with a lot of material. So it's now or never. Anyways, if you're used to these recordings, I will give you a fragment. You will say, okay, that's pretty fast. For an allegro, this is. And by the way, you're looking at the metronome mark given by Karl Czerny in the Haslinger edition. That's the metronome marks we choose for the sonatas. We could have chosen also the Opus 500 piano school or another edition. Just we stuck to these editions of Haslinger, which are very close to Beethoven's death, actually, that started in 1828. So, but if you're not used to listening whole beat, you might say it's a little bit slower than I expected. So therefore, I have a surprise for you. We're not going to start with Beethoven, just have a little bit of Bach. So Andras Schiff's just playing a random fugue, E flat major. I was looking to something with 16th note. Why Bach? Because there we need to come from. We need to come obviously from Bach, not from Rachmaninoff, in order to, have the original experience. I wouldn't even say, because in my view, Andras Schiff is taking this E flat major fugue a little too fast. But anyways, I wanted to give you something of another world to compare with Beethoven in order to make your listening experience with Beethoven a little bit more fresh. I want to take away a little bit of what's coming after Beethoven. So just 10 seconds of Andras Schiff. By the way, beautiful playing here in this fugue. It's unbelievable. Like too many people surprised maybe, but I like Bach on the piano quite a lot. But that's a whole other discussion. Just let's listen a few seconds and then we go to Alberto's performance of the Opus 28 movement number 4. Here we go. And so on. Here's Alberto. That's a very quick edit of 47 seconds. This video is obviously not online, where he played. It's last Saturday, so October 2024, where he sat down at my piano and played this incredible sonata. That's, by the way, also the sonata with the first pedal markings. Just saying. There we go. Okay, so if we just go back to the score, 2-4, this is, I would say, most probably, if not clearly, in a 4-8. And now if this is new for you, that's not a problem. 2-4 was often used as 4-8, which means you have 4-8 notes in the bar. I mean, that's obvious, right? But by having 4-8s, then you have more focus on the 8 notes and it slows down the tempo a little bit. So if you listen to the 8 notes, which Alberto was actually like emphasizing a little bit, taga, diga, 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 dum, bum. That's what happens later. Then you understand also that the tempo is pretty fast if you're used to listen in whole beat, because what happens is you learn to listen also to the subdivisions, and then this piece becomes very lively. Okay. So far, so good. We're going to rewind our friend Alberto a little bit because we're going to need him. And we're going to need him because we're going to do the exercise that I announced here. So if we take Marx as a point of departure and we say, okay, he mentions the metronome as a benchmark, as an accurate tempo indication. Okay, cool. We have a metronome mark. We have Carlo Czerny's half note 76. Well, then we have two options. Marx used the metronome in single beat, or he used the metronome in whole beat. But there's also something else. There's also something else, because if Marx said to musicians in that time, you can play some movements by Beethoven twice too fast, we should be able to play them twice too fast, right? He didn't say everything. That's the unique thing of this source. He made a list, Opus 26, 27, 53, 57. The other pieces we will come back to whenever Alberto made those recordings. But now we focus on the 26. If you really can play these works twice in the tempo that they are supposed to play, why would you do it? Why would you do it? Okay, now we have our whole beat version. That's the slowest of the versions that we're going to hear today. I have another version here for you, which is Valentina Lisitsa. She will be playing the fourth movement of that sonata in this tempo. Okay, so believe it or not, you can measure it. It's exactly double. So strangely enough, we have actually a confirmation of the point already now that what Mark said, why would you play these movements double the tempo? It's important that he mentions these pieces because in those instances, it is apparently possible. So I've never said that single beat is never possible. Single beat obviously is possible. I would say in dozens of instances, hundreds of instances, percent-wise, I wouldn't know. But I would say like in 30% of the instances of the metronome marks that we have, we are able to play in single beat. And guess what? Oftentimes that happens then also, as here is the case. But that's not the end of the story, of course, because now, and you all know where this is going to, I'm going to apply the Marx doctrine, which is, Marx says you should be able to play this twice the tempo. Not 175, but twice the tempo. So both players, we have a single beat version and we have a whole beat version. And remember, guys, this is just to discover, to unveil, so to say, what Marx actually had in mind. You can say, like, we will never know. Yes, we do know, because the differences of what we are going to hear now will tell us what Marx had in mind. And again, if you have trouble accepting whole beat as the evidently historical truth, then you will have a hard time, because after this video, there is no way back. This passage by Marx should end single beat as the default position, as the default reading of metronome marks of the past. This is enough. There is no other explanation, and you're going to see why. So what I will do is, I've sped up Alberto's recording, just double it, and I doubled Lisitsa's recording. Let's listen to Alberto first. In the case of the whole beat recording, I can speed the recording up twice, and we have confirmation Alberto would be able to do it as well. He would refuse to do it, but he would be able to play it. But we have a recording by Valentina Lisitsa that already played and doubled the tempo. In fact, what I will do is we go back to normal speed, and I will show it to you that the recording played by Alberto in double speed is actually the tempo that Lisitsa had. Now we go to Lisitsa normal speed. It's unbelievable. It's exactly the same. But of course, Marx said, if you can play it twice in the tempo that it's supposed to be played, why would you do it? And so remember, we're still figuring out how fast pianists played in 1863. This is Lisitsa's recording played in double the speed. Okay. It's game over, I would say. So again, for those of you that's maybe a little bit confusing, let's summarize this video very, very quickly. We have Adolf Bernhard Marx, 1863, saying that pianists, musicians in general, played way faster than musicians that composer actually intended in the past. He's using actually a reference to the metronome marks as saying that's an absolute tempo that we know it from that. After that, he wrote like virtuoso players play actually so fast that some movements can be played twice the tempo that they should be played in. Then we have a whole beat performance, which is our vision, the reading of the metronome. You take 2 ticks for one, and we have a single beat version, at least a performer that thinks that the single beat reading of the metronome at least should guide her. And in this instance, miraculously or not, she's able to play that movement exactly in twice the speed that Alberto took. So we have a 100% whole beat and a 100% single beat version. And now what we did is just we apply what Marx said. We doubled the speed of the whole beat version. The whole beat version becomes a single beat version, and we double the speed of the single beat version. So the single beat version becomes twice the single beat version. And the result of that is that in the case of Alberto, the whole beat version becomes Valentina Lisitsa's version. So what Marx is saying, you playing twice too fast, can only be replicated in the case of Alberto's whole beat recording. In the case of Lisitsa's recording, when we double that speed, the thing that Marx wrote about makes no sense at all, because we would get this result. And now we can have a debate about many things, but my guess is that in this case, everybody will agree that this makes no sense. This is not something we can actually ask players to do. And so, the conclusion of this video, of this one passage by Adolf Bernhard Marx, again, contextualized with a lot of other sources that I do not give you in this video. The book will have all these sources, but in the context of a 19th century time that, not surprisingly, was expanding all the time in every field, in every domain, in science, in building, in engineering, and also in music. They played faster and faster and faster, up to the point where someone like Marx said, why would you play twice the tempo, twice as fast, just because you can do it? The only conclusion, and that's the only takeaway of this video, if you wish, is that at least for Adolf Bernhard Marx, we can say, as a fact, that he was reading metronome marks in the way we did for our Beethoven, as a whole beat metronome mark. So the back and forth as one. There is no other option, whether you like it or not. Now you can make a lot of excuses not to take this source seriously, and that's fine, but it won't change the fact that in the case of Marx, we have no other choice than to accept that he was 100% a whole beater. Now, from here, we can go in a lot of directions, because Marx was not an isolated figure. He didn't say, I'm inventing something new. On the contrary, he was referring to the past. On the contrary, he was referring also to Beethoven's metronomization of the Opus 106, if only that. Also the string quartets. So his view on metronome marks was embedded in what was generally valid in that time and in Beethoven's time. And therefore, by extension, only by this source, by this one line, we can say with an almost 100% certainty that whole beat was the general reading of these metronome marks in the 19th century. Guys, I don't know sometimes how I can make things even more clear, and I have a hard time understanding why this message of whole beat, of this way of using, of reading, the solution, so to say, to these mysterious metronome marks, why it is so hard to not only convince people, but that just to make people aware of the importance of that. Why is it that people who just published in a Spanish article, an article saying that Beethoven actually was probably reading the metronome mark under the rod instead of above, under the weight, so to say, instead of above. Nobody saw that was like a replica of a 1970-ish article by Staden. Not saying that they deliberately did that, but the peer reviewers should have seen that. It was like almost like the same arguments, but why does that article, why does these videos that were made about that get millions of views sometimes? And it makes no sense. It makes no sense. Why do people still believe that Beethoven's metronome was broken while the damn thing can only function when it is working? It works properly or it doesn't work. Why are people searching for other explanations other than just what is in front of your eyes? It is just that simple. And if Marx proves one thing, it's inevitable. Is that important? Will that change your life? This is, once you're used to listening in this way, I would say yes. But you know what? I start to think more and more. Yeah, it's okay. We solved the mystery of the metronome marks of the past. Cool, great. If I would write a doctoral thesis on Beethoven's tempo indications, I would not have to write on page 14, like, listen, we're not going to try them because that's my responsibility. What's the outcome? I would actually say, let's just try that, because now finally we can do all of that. But I would say the greatest outcome is the video that I made recently about so many people get injured by playing the piano on a professional level, but even on a so-called amateur level. And this will end all of that instantly, because you know what it takes away? It takes away this drive, this urge, this motivation, so to say, these tools by teachers, by professors, by the entire academic system that actually are not aware that what they ask students, what they ask musicians, what they ask even listeners to go through, to do with this music, they think it's in the name of the composers, because we have here these metronome marks that nobody will ever reach, but we keep using them as like targets. We take away that element, and while taking that away and saying that doesn't belong here, it belongs here, we create a huge vacuum. And maybe that's the hardest thing for our current society, to just accept the facts as they are. Because when we take away that vacuum, where is our virtuosity? I would use the words by Marx or by Gottfried Wilhelm Fink, made a video on that long ago. Don't use Beethoven to demonstrate that. It was not meant like that. Okay, guys, not the shortest video ever made, but one of the coolest, right? Let me know in the comments. So, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. We see each other very soon again. Bye.